Hi everyone, it's Mr. Stewart here on behalf of Miss Gravina and Miss Woolley, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about how we will make footnotes for your essay. So I will guide you through the document you see on the screen here, and you'll have to follow along with this document found in your folder, probably called Using Footnotes or something like that, and listen carefully to what we say, and see how we insert footnotes. So the first question is, when do I actually insert a footnote? This is really important because you're probably wondering right away, what do I do and when do I do it? So the first point is, when you're quoting directly from a text and you know that your teachers have been telling you to include quotations in your essay. So whenever you do that, you will need to insert a footnote after the quotation. If you want to give a specific source of a piece of information, like a statistic or a little known fact, you will need to put a footnote after you include that statistic. For example, if you were saying that the number of immigrants went up a certain amount between 1960 and 70, you would want a source with a footnote where you got that information. The last thing is, if you are taking an idea that maybe is not a direct quotation, but it's an idea that you read about in a book, then you should footnote that idea in the paper. A footnote is just a little tiny indicator at the end of a sentence that shows where your information came from, as you'll see in a minute. It's also important to know when not to insert a footnote. So any widely known fact, such as when an election took place or who a prime minister is, these types of things, they do not need to be footnoted. Familiar proverbs or little biblical quotations, things like this, they do not need to be footnoted. It's really only when you want someone to know where your particular information came from, particularly if it's very important. So how do you do it? It's really easy with computers, and you just go to the end of a sentence where your quotation or idea appears, and you go, so I'm going to put my cursor right there. You go up to Insert Footnote, and there it is. Now look over here where it's number format. You definitely want to go with the 1, 2, 3 format. And then you will just, and you can also go with endnotes, which just means that all your notes will come at the end of the paper as opposed to at the bottom of the page. And you just go insert, and there it is. There's my little number 1, and maybe you're just writing in that the quotation came from Wilfrid Laurier, and it was a speech, and whatever the case may be. So that's where you'll fill in that information in the correct format, which we'll see a little bit later. So back up to where we were here. Okay, we've gone over this here. How do we insert a footnote? Now, what goes into a footnote? It's similar to a bibliography. You must include all the information you found, but in the case of a print source, you will include the page number, where you got that information from, or that statistic, or that quotation. Now, some of you may be fretting and thinking, I didn't write down page numbers for anything. For this time, I guess we'll just let that slide. But ideally, you will have the page number of the information. If it's from a web page, then there's no page number. You'll just include what the URL was in the title of the web page that it came from. Okay? So, remember also, you'll need to go to a source like the Diana Hacker Guide or another online source you use to get that correct format, but it's a little bit different from the bibliography. For example, in a bibliography, you always put the last name first and the first name last, but in a footnote, you don't have to do that reversal, but you'll see that when you go to one of your reference guides for that. And this is why we've said here, please refer to the Diana Hacker Guide, of which there are 4 or 5 copies on hold in the library, so you might want to check that out. Maybe you have another online guide that you like to use, and you can check that out as well. But that's what you'll need to do to be sure about the format. So I would say the bottom line here is the most important thing is this part here at the top. When do you insert a footnote? So you want to review that and be sure you understand. Some students are always asking me, how many footnotes should I have? And in a paper of this size, where it's probably going to be about 3 pages long, you probably want to have somewhere between, 8 to 12 footnotes, maybe 13 or 14, but certainly no more than that. 3 a page is not a bad guideline. If you're having too many footnotes, it means you're relying too much on your note-taking and not enough on your own analysis. So be very careful about how many footnotes you're using. 6 to 12 will be fine. Anything more than that, you got to start asking yourself what's going on. Okay, now the next piece here is for us to do a little test. So you have a document, a separate document in your folder called Practice Footnotes. And what I'd like you to do is stop the video now, go to your Practice Footnote document that looks like this, and I want you to put in footnotes wherever you think they belong. So it says just put in a number sign where you would place a footnote after reading this paragraph. All right? Once you've done that, come back to this video. So hit pause now, download this document, and take a look at where you would put footnotes in this paragraph. Okay, press pause. All right, welcome back. If you have done this exercise, you can continue to watch this video now. And let's see where the footnotes actually had to go. So if you scroll down into your document, I think you actually have to download another document called Footnote Answers. So you'll want to take a look at that. And let's see where the footnotes were put. Did you put one right here? Take a look at that and ask yourself, why would you put one there? The answer is because of this statistic that is quoted in the sentence. 2,752 of the 5,000 Canadian soldiers were killed, wounded, or taken as prisoners of war. So that's why we have a footnote there, because we're quoting a statistic. The next footnote went right here. Now, why did we put one there? This is because we're obviously referring to some author's idea. Take a look at the sentence. Controversy surrounds this raid as some feel that lives were sacrificed unnecessarily, as this attack had little chance of being successful. So we know that there's some controversy. We also are recognizing here that some feel. And so we want to know, well, who are the some that feel this way? And so when you look at the footnote number 2, then we'll be able to find out what the author is referring to there when she cites this controversial raid and that some feel that lives were sacrificed unnecessarily. So that's why you have to have a footnote there. We're referring to a specific idea from another author. Footnote number 3, fairly straightforward. Hopefully everyone put one here. And the reason is pretty obvious. It's a quotation from a source. And whenever you have a quotation from a source, you want to make sure that you have a footnote for it. The last footnote goes over here, footnote number 4, and it's for a similar reason. It's another quotation. Notice how this quotation is quite illustrative of a point. In Dieppe, where the 1942 war tragedy is taught in the early grades of school and retold reverently at dinner tables, Canadian veterans continue to enjoy an awe they don't always find at home. See, that's a quotation that couldn't be written by the author herself. It's a quotation that reveals something to us about the nature of the topic. And I want you to make sure when you use your quotations that you don't use quotations simply to reveal facts. You use quotations to buttress or support points you're trying to make. Okay? That's an important point to understand. So there's where the 4 footnotes are. If you need to review how these footnotes are put together, I suggest that you rewatch this video. And if you have any particular questions about them, then you may want to speak to your teacher or look up a couple of things online. But the basic thing you need to understand about a footnote is that it is simply a way of telling the reader of your paper where the information came from that is in your paper. Information that may be in a statistic, information that may be a quotation, or information that may be an idea that you took from one of your sources. So fairly simple, fairly straightforward, and it's an important part of scholarship that you'll have to do in all of your humanities courses in grade 11, grade 12, and if you're following up with that into university too. It's a very important thing to be able to do. All right, if you have any questions, speak to your teacher. Good luck with this. Don't fret about it. We're just learning how to do footnotes the first time. They're not always the easiest thing to do, but it's a good experience to have going through this process. So don't worry about some sort of perfection. Just worry about trying to get your footnotes in. All right, take care.